Good evening. Welcome to another Mothman-podcast. You're listening to Gerald Rourke, the Mothman. I hope you enjoyed tonight's podcast. We're going to be listening to some ghost stories from real people. So, sit back, turn the lights down low, and let's get into real ghosts told by real people.
So my uncle and I, we were really close. He passed away when I was a little girl, and he used to play Pretty Pretty Princess with me, which has these little plastic rings that you wear during the game. And I loved this one ring, and when he passed away, I put it in his casket with him. And, I did it during the funeral. Everyone saw it in there. And one day, a few weeks after the funeral, I woke up one morning and the ring that I'd put in his casket showed up on my nightstand. No one had removed it from the casket. No one knew how it got there, but it was the exact same ring. And I was little and I didn't think anything of it, but my mom swears up and down that it is the spookiest thing that's ever happened to her.
I went hiking one time with myself and two friends out west, and we drove about 2 hours to an off the beaten track kind of location. We hiked for the day, and then come the evening time when it was starting to get dark, we came across an abandoned logging camp, and we said we'd set up there for the night. We put up our tents, we lit a fire. It was so cold out, and we had our jackets on and were bundled up trying to keep warm. Out of the darkness on this side, we all noticed a figure coming out. What really struck us was straight away that he had no big clothing on. It was freezing out. We were all wrapped up. He was just in like a red plaid shirt, and he was carrying one of these old school tin lunch pails, and looked like he's from, say, the 1800s or something. And he just walked right through us, just right where we were camped, didn't look at us. He continued on into the darkness on the other side of where we'd camped up, and it took us like 5 minutes to realize just how scared we all were. We can just assume it's a ghost of an old logging guy from 100 years ago.
So I moved to the East Village a couple years ago. Everything seemed okay moving in at first, and then little things started to happen that just felt off. The first thing I noticed was knocking on my door, and I assumed it was my sister, so I'd walk over to the door and open it, and no one was there. That was something I always told myself, it's just the pipes, it's an old building, blame it on that. One day after work, I walked home and smelled a gas leak coming out of the apartment. And I didn't realize it was coming from my apartment until I got to the front door. It was reeking. And I opened the door and ran over to the burners, which were all on in the same exact angle. And all the doors and windows were shut in the apartment, which I did not leave them that way. So it was very spooky. And I still live there.
Growing up, me and my sister, we shared a bedroom. One night in the middle of the night, I woke up, and in between our bed was this guy in a pinstripe suit standing there with a fedora and a briefcase. And I was like, obviously assuming that I'm having a dream or a nightmare. And he wouldn't turn or anything. He never looked. I never saw his face. I never looked at him, but he would just stare right out the window. And I threw the covers over my head and would freak out, and then I would fall back asleep. And so one morning after I saw him there, I turned to my sister because we'd woken up at the same time, and I was like, Jillian, I saw this guy last night, and he was standing there with a pinstripe suit, and she was like, and a fedora and a briefcase. And I was like, yeah, and a fedora and a briefcase. And she was like, I saw him too. She's like, I always see him. And I was like, wait, I was like, me too. Right now I can close my eyes and I can see it so perfectly, and I sound like I'm making it the biggest lie in the world, but it's the weirdest thing. I don't know. Me and my sister still talk about it to this day.
Well, if you have a ghost story, I would love for you to call me and talk to me about it. You can reach me at 336-268-0018 or send me an email to mothman-podcast@gmail.com. I have one story that was sent to me that I'd like to share with you, and it's pretty interesting. It's It's called, I'm going to name it The Old Rugged Cross. This lady sent in this letter. She says, my mama and dad visited me in California in the middle 1960s. I took them to a new church. It was a Baptist church there in California, and it was their first experience with this kind of service, and they both loved it, especially the hymn called The Old Rugged Cross. Having been Catholic all their lives, they had never heard the song before. In the early 1970s, when I moved back home, I moved back with them, and they used to love to sing this song together. My dad developed cancer and died about 6 months after he developed the cancer. Mom lived about 5 weeks longer, and then she died of a broken heart. They had been married for over 60 years, and despite their advanced age, their passing was very painful for me. 1 year later, I was visiting my sister, who was now living in the Bahamas. On the flight over, I became very lonely for my parents. I prayed that I would be given a sign that they could contact me from the other side. Shortly after I arrived, a couple of days later, I was walking along on the island it was a beautiful day, and I was enjoying the sun and cool breeze. I heard organ music coming from the woods. I walked to the music and saw a tiny church in the middle of nowhere. I entered the building and saw an elderly lady sitting at the organ playing music. We smiled at each other, and I sat down. She played a number of hymns, which I surely enjoyed. Then she looked straight at me and said, "This hymn's for you." I was shocked when she started playing The Old Rugged Cross. Mom and Dad's favorite hymn was played for me on a remote island in the Bahamas. I knew then they were sending me a message. If you have a story, send it to me, and I'll be more than happy to share it with our listeners. So that brings our Mothman episode for this week to an end. I appreciate everybody listening. I hope you enjoyed the true life spirits that was talked to us from people who really experienced this phenomena. Like I said, if you have something, please contact us, and we would be more than happy to put it on the air for you. Until next time, have a great evening. This is the Mothman saying good night.